Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. Before I get started today, please take a moment and look here on your screen and wish everyone a happy birthday here in August. From myself, happy birthday to you all, and I hope your day is as special as you are. I'd like to take a moment and also acknowledge the elite members of the channel. Thank you for your continued love and dedication to this channel and myself. I appreciate you more than I can put into words. With all of that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Scary Police Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. Right after the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I've been on the force for over 2 decades now, staring into the abyss of human frailty night after night. But some calls burrow under your skin like parasites, whispering secrets you'd rather not hear. It started with that godforsaken 3:42 a.m. dispatch on what should have been the tail end of a ghost quiet midnight shift. I was parked in my unit near the station lot, scribbling the last details on a mundane vehicle burglary report, the kind that numbs your soul with its predictability. The radio crackled to life, shattering the silence like a bone snapping in the dark. Priority welfare check on an elderly female, single resident. The 911 call had been incomplete. Nothing but shallow, ragged breathing on the line, followed by unintelligible whispering that slithered through the static like a voice from the grave. The dispatcher had tried to confirm the address, called back repeatedly, but got only dead air. Protocol kicked in hard for open lines like that, especially from a landline tied to a senior living alone. You treat it as high priority because the unknown festers, and in the witching hours, the mind conjures horrors that logic can't dispel. I acknowledge immediately. Unit 12 en route, ETA 4 minutes. And Officer Rivera, my partner that shift, tailed me in his cruiser. 2-car response was standard. You never walk into the void solo, even if it smells like a simple medical. The shadows hide too many surprises, and vague intel like this, it reeks of something coiled and waiting. We pulled up to the modest 1-story bungalow off Claimant Drive, its front porch light casting a sickly yellow glow that bled into the fog-shrouded lawn. Curtains drawn tight, like eyelids over secrets. No flicker of movement inside. No sounds but the distant hum of the city's underbelly. The front door was locked, unyielding as a tombstone. We knocked, pounded, really, and announced ourselves. Police department. Ma'am, are you okay? We're here to check on you. Silence answered, thick and mocking, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Rivera and I circled the perimeter, flashlights slicing through the gloom like knives. Rear door secured, windows intact, no fresh tracks marring the dew-slicked grass. The place looked undisturbed, but that stillness, it wasn't peaceful. It was predatory, like the calm before a predator strikes. A radio dispatch for EMS and fire forced entry on a possible medical emergency. No response from inside. They arrived in 6 agonizing minutes, and we breached under Welfare Authority, Section 403, allowing us to shatter the barrier when exigent circumstances whisper of injury or death lurking within. The door gave way with a groan that echoed too long in my ears, and as we stepped over the threshold, a chill seeped into my bones, unrelated to the night air. The house was clean, but untouched in a way that screamed abandonment, like time had paused mid-breath. TV off, lights dim except for a flickering nightlight in the hallway that cast elongated shadows dancing like specters on the walls. Rivera veered left. I pushed down the hallway, each step creaking underfoot, as if the floorboards resented our intrusion. I found her in the bedroom, seated in a recliner by the window, the corded landline phone cradled in her lap like a lifeless child, fingers loosely curled around the receiver, eyes closed in what might have passed for serene repose. No trauma, no defensive wounds, no signs of forced anything. Peaceful, almost. Too peaceful. But she was cold. Stone cold. I've got 25 years under my belt, EMT certified before the academy, and I know death's touch. No pulse at cardioid. Or radial. Skin waxy and cool. Liver mortis pooling and purple bruising along her lower limbs. Rigor faint but undeniable. She'd been gone for hours, my gut said. Later confirmed by the ME as shortly before 1:30 a.m. And yet, dispatch had logged the 911 call at 3:39 a.m. after she was dead. The recording haunted me. 38 seconds of open line, starting with heavy, uneven breathing that rasped like a final gasp from beyond. Then the whisper, faint, not words exactly, but a tone slithering low, intimate, as if murmured not to the dispatcher but to someone, something else in the room. A secret shared in the dark. Then silence. Click. We secured the scene. No forced entry. No struggle. No pills at a place. Nothing amiss. Her last contact? A grocery delivery 2 days ago. Rivera was unnaturally quiet on the drive back, finally muttering, "Sarge, how'd the phone come off the cradle if she'd been gone that long?" I had no answer, just a creeping dread that coiled in my chest. Call logs showed only the outgoing to 911. No redials, no tampering. Old rotary handset on a copper line, impossible to spoof. The call traced right back to inside the house. Forensics found only her DNA on the receiver. ME ruled natural cardiac arrest. No foul play, no history of delusions. Case closed. But it wasn't. I listened to that tape 3 times before filing my report. And even now, I keep a copy in my personal file. Not because I buy into ghosts or Hollywood nonsense. I'm facts and logic all the way. But this, it doesn't fit. Sometimes I lie awake, wondering if she sensed her end coming and reached out into some limbo state, or if whatever claimed her lingered, mimicking her final plea. She died holding that phone, but someone or something dialed after. It called us, drawing us into its web, and left us with questions that gnaw like teeth in the night. That unease followed me like a shadow, bleeding into the next call that came just weeks later, on a Tuesday that dawned gray and oppressive. Tenants in a rundown apartment complex, post-war relic from the mid-1950s, all concrete block and crumbling drywall. Started flooding, dispatched without complaints. Nothing new for those forgotten corners of the city, where despair breeds noise disputes and narcotics whispers. But this was different. A strong odor seeping from inside the walls of Unit 1B, like mildew laced with decay, sweet and sour, the kind that clings to your nostrils and burrows into your dreams. Some heard soft knocks at night, irregular taps, not rhythmic, just enough to unsettle, like fingers scratching from within. One tenant swore to whispers behind her bathroom wall, faint pleas that dissolved into the ether. I was field supervisor that day, so I rolled on it with Officer Tran. Full uniform, body cams rolling, Glocks holstered, tasers at the ready. The building loomed like a centennial forgotten sins. 3 stories of faded paint and sagging eaves. The property manager met us at the door, a jittery man in his 60s with eyes darting like he'd seen too much. "I don't go in alone anymore," he muttered, voice trembling. Tenants in 1A and 1C had been griping for over a week. Foul smell through the vents, whispers that mocked sleep. Unit 1B had been vacant 6 months. Last tenant vanished, skipping rent, no trace. We entered with consent, no breach needed. But the air inside hit like a shroud. Stale, thick, pregnant with that odor. Old decay. Not fresh rot, but something desiccated and insidious. Gloves on, N95s masking our faces. We cleared room by room. No squatters, no chaos. But the smell intensified toward the bathroom wall shared with 1A. Then it came. 3 knocks. Light. Tentative. Like a plea from the damned. We froze. I knocked back. 3 deliberate raps. Silence swallowed them. I radioed for a crime scene and building inspector. Possible 1054. Deceased person. Fire assisted the breach. Schematics showed no plumbing or wiring there. They peeled back the drywall carefully, and about 2 feet in, between vertical studs, we glimpsed it. A human leg, mummified, skin leathery and taut, barefoot toes curled in eternal agony. We halted, secured the scene. Unattended death with suspicious vibes. Homicide, an ME rolled in. More wall came down, revealing the full horror. Male, mid-30s, wedged vertically, arms clutched to his chest in a gray hoodie and jeans. No ID, no trauma, no restraints. He'd entered via a pried open maintenance panel behind the water heater. No front door breach. ME pegged death at 8 to 10 months prior. The wall cavity's stable temperature had mummified him, sealing the odor until cracks formed. Fingerprints? Clean. DNA and CODIS? No hits. Canvas turned up memories of strange noises a year back. One tenant heard a whispered, "Help," dismissed as a nightmare. Another recalled knocking on that wall for 2 nights. Then nothing. Theories swirled, hiding from gangs, abuse, or worse. Squatter who slipped. But his position screamed intent. Crawled in, sealed away, like burying himself alive. No foul play evidence. Death undetermined. Identity unknown. Case cold. Yet the knocking lingers in my mind. Deliberate, not desperate. By the time we answered, it was too late. These calls, they connect in the dark recess of my thoughts. The dead woman's whisper on the line, the mummified man's taps from the wall. They echo like invitations from the other side, pulling at the threads of reality. I don't explain it anymore. I just know. Sometimes the dead reach out, and when they do, they drag a piece of you into the shadows with them. and in the quiet hours, I swear I hear them still. I never fancied myself the hero type, the kind who polishes a badge until it gleams like a false promise under fluorescent lights. Adrenaline on the streets? That was for fools chasing shadows in alleyways, hearts pounding like war drums. No, what drew me in was something quieter, more insidious: control. The kind warped in barbed wire and routine, where power isn't a game but a cold, unyielding fact. That's why I slithered into the role of a corrections officer. Prisons don't lie. They strip everything bare, revealing the rot beneath the skin. No illusions, just hierarchies etched in blood and steel. I thrived in the graveyard shifts, those unholy hours when the world outside slept, oblivious to the beasts we caged. Our facility was a sprawling beast of concrete and despair. One of the state's largest. We housed the dregs, twitchy addicts scratching at invisible itches, thieves with eyes like hollowed pits, and the true predators, those whose crimes whispered nightmares into your soul. They should have been fed to the earth long ago, but society prefers to let them fester behind bars. Fights erupted like boils bursting, lockdowns clamped down like iron jaws, contraband slithered in through cracks we pretended not to see. Riots in the yard left stains that bleach couldn't erase. It was never dull. It was a twisted symphony that kept you vigilant, because a single lapse could invite a blade to your throat, carving a grin where your screams would pour out. Over the years, I witnessed horrors that clawed at my sanity. Fights where eyes were gouged like overripe fruit. Suicides that painted walls in crimson regret. Mutilations that turned men into grotesque parodies of themselves. One inmate tore off his own ear with a shard of plastic, blood spraying like a ritual offering, just to escape the general population's maw. We had infamous ones too, names that curled the air if uttered aloud, souls so black they seemed to suck the light from the cells. But one dawn, something slithered out from the depths, a story I've buried deeper than graves, whispering only now to you, as if the shadows might finally claim me for my silence. It was a Tuesday, or was it Thursday? I don't know. The pre-dawn hours bleed into one another, a murky fog that dulls the edges of my memory. I clocked in at 5 a.m., clipboard clutched like a talisman, coffee steaming, bitter and black, chasing away the gritty burn in my eyes from a sleep too shallow, too haunted by echoes. The air reeked of bleach, masking urine, a perpetual miasma that clung to your skin like a second layer of guilt. As I made my rounds, I noticed Block B stirring prematurely, a hornet's nest humming with unnatural fervor. Showers weren't due yet. Routines were sacred, disruptions a harbinger of chaos. I scanned the roster. 30 inmates, a volatile mix of lifers and short-timers, their collective malice buzzing like static in the air. Something gnawed at me, a prickling unease like fingers tracing my spine. No schedule change had been logged. The warden's whims were unpredictable, designed to keep the animals off balance. But this felt deliberate, deeper. The usual cacophony was absent. No jeers echoing off tiles. No slaps of soap, slick feet. No crude barbs hurled like darts. Instead, a low rhythmic thump pulsed throughout the corridors, wet and insistent. Not the drip of faulty plumbing or the thump of a mop. It was organic, alive, like a heart beating in the walls, drawing me closer against my will. I keyed into the hallway leading to the showers. The door, a monolithic centennial of rusted steel. There, COs loitered like specters. Conley, with his dead fish stare. Jace, perpetually coiled like a spring. And Lupo, that twitchy sadist whose grin always hinted at unspoken cruelties, eyes gleaming with the promise of violence. They weren't posted. They lingered, arms folded, faces masks of quiet complicity. The air grew thicker, heavier, laced with a metallic twang that set my teeth on edge. "What's brewing?" I asked, halting at the threshold, my voice echoing too loudly in the oppressive quiet. Conley met my gaze, his head shaking imperceptibly, a warning etched into his pallor. "Don't," he murmured, the word slithering out like a curse. "Just don't." Lupo leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the floor as if it held secrets, his lips twitching with suppressed amusement. Jace said nothing, his silence a void sucking in the tension. I'm not wired for blind obedience. Curiosity is a venom that courses through me, compelling me forward. As I advanced, the sound pierced the still door. A scream, not feral or defiant, but raw gurgling, like a soul being dragged through a barbed wire. It echoed off the tiles, amplifying into something profane, a lament from the abyss. The trio didn't intervene. They stood like statues, unflinching, as if this were a ritual they'd sworn to uphold. "What the hell is unfolding in there?" I demanded, my heart thudding in sync with the wet rhythm. Jace finally broke, his voice a gravely whisper. "Chuck, new fish, Block's darling." It snapped into place like a lock tumbler. Charles went by Chuck. Fresh meat, 3 days in. His file was a tome of depravity, marked with a black tab and the warden's scrawl. High risk, protective custody, advised against. Charges that twisted your guts. Child assault, kidnapping, acts so vile they lingered in your mind like stains. In prison's savage ecosystem, he was plankton, chum for the sharks. Predators have their code. Even monsters despise those who prey on the innocent. He volunteered for early showers, Lupo added, his smirk widening, revealing teeth too sharp, too eager. "So did the rest of Block B," Conley interjected, his tone flat, eyes avoiding mine. The implication hung like a noose, tightening around my throat. They let it happen, orchestrated it, perhaps. "You're saying we sold nothing," Conley got in, sharp as a shank. "Your early shift, first in, nothing more." Then the scream surged again, louder, a wet wail like a man unraveling from the inside out, birthing agony in reverse. I lunged for the door, keys jangling like chains of condemnation, but Jace barred my path, his bulk a wall of unyielding flesh. "Let it unfold," he hissed, eyes boring into mine, devoid of light. "This is justice. You know it. I know it." "Jesus Christ," I breathed, bile rising. "Jesus abandoned this place long ago," Lupo chuckled, his grin a slash in the dim light. I froze, ensnared in that moment as a symphony of terror swelled, fists meeting flesh with meaty thuds, bones cracking like brittle twigs underfoot, something hissing, sizzling, like skin meeting flame. The stench assaulted next. Charred meat, acrid and foul, mingled with a coppery bloom of blood and the sharp tang of urine. A retch echoed from beyond the door, followed by laughter. Genuine guttural mirth, as if this were a carnival of the damned. An inmate's voice boomed, muffled but clear. "Remind him how it feels, boys." Another roared back. "Don't let him fade yet. We're just warming up." No cameras in the showers. Budget cuts had stripped them away, leaving blind spots where darkness thrived. No CO would testify. Complicity was our unspoken oath. "Why?" I whispered to no one, the question a feeble plea. Conley answered as if reciting doctrine. "They crave it. And in return, model behavior. Everyone wins, except that twisted filth." "What if he doesn't walk away?" I pressed, voice cracking. Lupo snorted, eyes glittering. "Suicide, like the others before him." My chest constricted. A vice of ice. I loathed Chuck. His crime a poison that deserved eradication. But this wasn't justice. It was a primordial right, an offering to sate the prison's insatiable hunger, keeping the beasts placated with blood. The screams built to a crescendo, then ebbed into something far worse. Sobs, high and childlike. A grown man, 240 pounds of broken flesh, reduced to whimpering like a whelp in the jaws of wolves. "That's enough," one inmate barked. "He's shitting himself now." "Not yet," came the reply, laced with glee. "Not quite." Then the abyss deepened. Silence, profound and suffocating, broken by a roar of cheers, primal and triumphant. A voice, cold as grave soil, intoned, "Cut him." The scream that followed pierced like a dagger, shrill and desperate, a final plea swallowed by the void. Then nothing. Just the drip, drip, drip of mingled water and pulling on the tiles. A macabre metronome counting down to oblivion. Nausea roiled. My limbs were leaden, keys fused to my belt like shackles. Disassociation claimed me, a merciful haze as the world dissolved into nightmare. I'd seen savagery, stabbings that wept red rivers, burnings that left charred husks, a hanging where the rope danced like a lover. But this was orchestrated, sanctioned, a theater of horrors where we were both audience and puppeteers. Eventually, the door creaked open. 3 COs slunked in like shadows, murmuring into radios for a stretcher. No urgency, just the rote cleanup of spilled secrets. They wheeled Chuck out, a mangled husk clinging to life. Naked face bloated like spoiled meat, blood crusted between his thighs where they excised his manhood with crude precision. Burns blistered his legs. Hot water? Bleach? Teeth shattered into jagged ruins. So much blood it choked the drains for days. A vicious testament. He stared ceilingward, blinking vacantly, as if his soul had fled, leaving a shell to rot. Chuck survived, and that's the barb that twists deepest in my nights. Not whole, not human, just a breathing ruin, tubed and diapered in the infirmary, stitched together like a Frankenstein's regret. Back to Gen Pop he went, protective custody, a hollow shield. Rumors spread like venom through veins. The ghost of Block B, shuffling soul, mute, flinching at phantoms. Inmates tainted his meals with filth. Nurses murmured curses behind charts. Alone in medical, he weeps softly, an eternal echo of that childlike sob, as if his essence had fractured irreparably. Yet, no one touched him again. He wasn't feared. He was obliterated. A trophy parading the consequences of falling in the chairs nadir. And I persisted patrolling the same tainted halls, nodding to those complicit guardians, burying the rot under paperwork and numb rituals. Corrections erode you, teaching you to harbor decay in your core, dubbing it duty. 5 years post-incident, a note materialized on my locker, scrap of toilet paper scrawled in anonymous script. You watched it happen. Sleep evaded me, shadows lengthening into accusations. A week later, Lupo cornered me in the break room, stirring coffee with a fork like a witch's brew. What we did to Chuck? Not punishment. Theater. For them and us. His eyes held mine, bottomless pits reflecting my own complicity. I snarled for silence. He laughed, humming a forgotten dirge as he sauntered away. Conley fell 2 years on, ousted for smuggling phones to lifers, pockets lined with blood money. Jace met his end in a drunken crash, metal twisting like fate's cruel jest. Lupo endures, stalking corridors, grin eternal, privy to jests from hell's underbelly. I transferred eventually, county intake, less gore, more paperwork. But the stain lingers, indelible. Dreams assail me, steam veiling windows like shrouds. Chuck's swollen eyes weeping silent pleas as he's willed past. He perished a year before my exodus. Heart failure, they claimed, though it could have been the prison's slow poison. This tale? I've entombed it, untold to warden, wife, therapist, amid lockdowns turned sieges. First utterance now, to you, wondering if ears prick in the dark, badges tarnished, compasses shattered. Prisons aren't justice. They're precarious equilibria. When scales tip, we withdraw, letting devils orchestrate the fall. God forsake those slipping through fissures. We've already condemned them to the void. I've been an island state trooper for 6 years now, but some nights when the wind howls off the coast like a distant scream, I still feel like that wide-eyed rookie, stumbling into a nightmare that refuses to let go. The worst investigations carve themselves into your soul, don't they? They linger in the corners of your mind, whispering doubts and what-ifs long after the case files gather dust. My first real bad one was like that. Raw, unrelenting, and utterly devoid of the mercy of closure. Most guys get some kind of ending to their horrors, a neat bow tied by evidence or confession. Me? I got shadows. Endless, creeping shadows that slither through my dreams, reminding me that evil doesn't always announce itself with thunderclaps. Sometimes it hides in the mundane, waiting to unravel everything you thought you knew. It started innocently enough, or so it seemed. A fatal traffic accident on Highway 1 out near Narragansett, where the road twists like a serpent through the fog-shrouded pines. Some fool on a motorcycle had veered into the wrong lane, smashing headlong into a sedan driven by a mother of 3. The impact was apocalyptic. Bodies scattered across the asphalt like discarded puppets, limbs twisted in ways that mocked the human form. Blood painted the highway in abstract patterns, gleaming under the harsh glare of our cruiser lights. I remember the metallic twang in the air, thick and coiling, as if the night itself had been wounded. The investigating officer was buried in paperwork from another mess, so my superior, a grizzled sergeant with eyes like chipped flint, and I drew the short straw. Deliver the death notification to the motorcyclist's next of kin. Simple duty, right? Except nothing about this felt simple. Whispers from the scene suggested it wasn't just reckless driving. The biker had executed a sharp U-turn, barreling the wrong way down the highway like he was chasing oblivion itself. Drunk? High? Toxology would tell, but the crash scene investigator, a man who'd seen enough mangled metal to lose faith in humanity, pulled us aside with a furrowed brow. "No way this was at 70, he muttered, his voice low, as if afraid the wreckage might overhear. The speedometer on the bike had frozen at around that mark miles back. But the devastation? Catastrophic. Front end of the sedan crumpled like tinfoil. The motorcycle reduced to a twisted skeleton. He estimated impact at nearly 190 miles per hour. Impossible acceleration on that stretch of road. Unless the rider had floored it with suicidal intent, dragging an innocent soul into his personal abyss. "Take someone with me as I go," the investigator had said, his words hanging in the air like a curse. We kept it clean for the notification. No speculation about self-destruction or the horror he'd inflicted on that poor mother. The coroner took his time IDing the biker through dental records. The body was unrecognizable, a pulped mess that seemed to defy identification, as if the man had been erasing himself long before the crash. Finally, we got a name and an address, a sprawling old house in an upscale neighborhood, the kind with manicured lawns that hid secrets behind their pristine facades. We rolled up in the early evening, the sun dipping low, casting long skeletal shadows across the driveway. 2 cars sat there, silent sentinels, but something felt off from the start. No lights flickered in the windows, no murmur of life. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums, making you strain for sounds that aren't there. Looking back, that's when the alarm bells should have screamed, not just rung. In accidents like this, especially one in the dead of night, someone always reports the victim missing by dawn. A spouse spreading over an empty bed, a boss wondering about a no-show. It greases the wheels of identification. We cross-reference with missing persons lists, and bam, closure begins. But not here. No report, not a whisper. For a homeless drifter or a junkie lost in the gutters, sure, that's the tragedy of the forgotten. But this guy? Wealthy, suburban, a family man by all accounts? It reeked of wrongness, like the world had conspired to swallow him whole without a trace. Who lives like that? Isolated in plain sight? What kind of darkness festers in a home where no one notices your absence? We rang the doorbell, the chime echoing hollowly into the gathering dusk. No answer. Happens sometimes. Headphones, shower, yard work, innocent excuses. But as we circled the property, the air grew heavier, charged with an unseen menace. The side gate was unlocked, swinging open with a faint creak that sent a shiver down my spine. We stepped into the backyard, boots crunching on gravel that sounded unnaturally loud. The rear porch loomed, its large glass windows peering into the kitchen like unblinking eyes. At first glance, everything was picture perfect. Counters gleaming, appliances humming faintly. But then I saw it, near the refrigerator. Food items arrayed on the floor in neat rows, jars of condiments, milk cartons, vegetables, all lined up like obedient spectators to some grotesque performance. Why? Who empties a fridge so methodically, so ritualistically? My sergeant spotted it first, his face paling under the porch light. He peered through the glass, then recoiled, yanking me back with a vice-like grip. "Radio dispatch," he hissed, his voice taut as a wire. "Probable cause for entry." I didn't see it yet, my rookie eyes blind to the horror. But I complied, heart pounding as he booted the door open. Wood splintered with a crack that echoed like a gunshot in the still evening. Inside, the kitchen air was cool, unnaturally so, carrying a faint antiseptic chill that masked something fouler beneath. That's when it hit me. The question that clawed at my gut. Why gut the fridge entirely? Shelves removed, drawers yanked out, not for cleaning, but to make space. Space for something large, something that needed preserving, lest it rot and betray its presence with the stench of decay. My stomach lurched as we approached the appliance, its door slightly ajar, as if inviting us to witness the abomination within. We pulled her out first, the wife. Her body unfolded like the main compartment, like a broken doll, limbs contorted into impossible angles, skin molted with bruises that bloomed like dark flowers across her flesh. Beaten savagely, strangled until her eyes bulged in eternal accusation. And the infant daughter. Oh my God. The freezer. Tiny, fragile, folded like origami. Her cherubic face frozen in a silent scream. Purple welts marring what should have been innocence personified. They hadn't mattered to him. Discarded like refuse. Crammed into cold metal tombs to stave off putrefaction. The scene burned into my retinas, a tableau of domestic hell that whispered of a madness deeper than mere rage. By then, the narrative coalesced in our minds. He'd slaughtered his family in a frenzy, then fled on that damn motorcycle, seeking annihilation on the highway. Guilt's final act. Evidence collection felt mechanical, a farce in the face of such brutality. But as we dug, the cracks appeared, fissures in the story that let in an icy dread. First, the man was a ghost in the system. No criminal record, not even a parking ticket. No mental health flags, no whispers of instability. Friends and family painted him as gentle, a pillar without a crack. Not a violent bone in his body, they chorused, their eyes wide with disbelief. Cell phones yielded nothing, no heated texts, no simmering resentments. Their marriage? A facade of bliss or something more sinister? A perfect illusion. Hiding what? Then the motorcycle. No one knew he owned one. Not a soul. Blank statements from 2 years back. Clean. No purchases. No loans. Paid in cash. A gift. But why the secrecy? Hiding a bike isn't hard, but concealing its existence entirely? It suggested premeditation, a shallow life parallel to the one he presented. What rode that bike before the crash? The man we thought we knew? Or something else wearing his skin? And the third anomaly, the one that still sends chills racing across my flesh like ghostly fingers, was the connection, unearthed later by a private investigator hired by the widowed husband, clawing through old records like a man possessed. Our biker and the mother he obliterated. They shared a Manhattan office building in the late 2000s. Brief overlap, different floors, different firms, no proof of interaction, just elevators, perhaps, where glances could linger too long. But on a desolate highway, in the dead of night, he chooses her? Coincidence? Or a thread in a web we couldn't see? The department dismissed it. Case closed. Dead men tell no tales. But I couldn't. Wouldn't. What if it wasn't suicide, but sacrifice? What if he wasn't fleeing guilt, but fulfilling an unholy pact? We chased leads into the void, but answers evaporated like mist at dawn. No prosecution for the departed. Justice mocked by the grave. Limbo. That's where it left us. All of us. The husband's grief twisted into obsession. The family shattered. And me? Haunted. 4, 5 years on, and those questions gnaw at me in the quiet hours. Was he possessed by some lurking darkness, a force that puppeteered his hands to murder and his throttle to doom? Or was it always there, buried in the banal, waiting for the right moment to erupt? Such is life, they say. Closure's a myth, a fairy tale for the unscarred. Time doesn't heal. It festers, turning wounds into scars that itch with unspoken horrors. And on nights like this, when the wind whispers through the pines, I swear I hear the rev of that phantom motorcycle, racing toward an end that never comes. Never meant to become a cop. It was supposed to be a temporary fix, a steady paycheck after the Army spit me out like a spent cartridge. Something with benefits, enough to squirrel away cash for school or maybe wrenching on trucks in some quiet garage. But Denver, oh, Denver has teeth. It sinks them in slow, whispers promises of stability while it gnaws at your soul. 1 year blurred into 2, then 5, and before I could catch my breath, a decade had slithered by. I was patrolling the metro's underbelly, where the shadows stretched longer each night, hungry for the unwary. This was the mid-2010s, when the city began its descent into something feral, something that clawed at the edges of sanity. Blame the skyrocketing rent if you want to, or the fentanyl that slithered through veins like venom, turning people into hollow-eyed puppets, or point to the courts, that endless carousel of catch and release, where justice was just a cruel joke. But deep down, I knew the truth. Everything fractured at once, like a mirror shattered in the dark, reflecting back 1,000 twisted versions of reality. Tent cities sprouted like tumors behind every grease-slicked fast food joint, needles glinting in playground sandboxes like forgotten fangs. The alleys reeked of urine and unspoken fury, a miasma that clung to your skin, seeping into your pores. And the people, they weren't just angry, they were unraveling. Threads of humanity fraying under an invisible weight, eyes darting like trapped animals ready to lash out at the first thing that moved. Often, that thing was us. Don't misunderstand. There were nights that passed in a haze of routine, almost bearable. Fitz, my partner, was a mountain of a man, slow-moving but sharp as a scalpel. He handled the brute force, the paperwork that felt like chains binding us to the desk. I was the quick one, the talker, diffusing bombs with words before they exploded into fists or bullets. We balanced each other, covering blind spots in a job that mirrored war, but with forms to file after the smoke cleared. Most shifts dragged us through 5 Points or Low Dew, haunting liquor stores and subway platforms where the fluorescent lights buzzed like swarms of angry insects. We'd break up brawls spilling out of the 7-Eleven on Black Street, the kind where blood mixed with spilled Slurpees on the linoleum. But every so often, a night slithered in that didn't fit the pattern, a night that burrowed into your marrow, festering like an untreated wound, reminding you the danger wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something that whispered of chaos, lurking just beyond the veil of normalcy. I can still see that night etched into my mind, sharp and vivid, like a photograph developed in blood. The sky hung low, bloated and orange, from wildfire haze that choked the air, turning the city into a smoldering inferno waiting to ignite. Sirens wailed in the distance before our shift even began, a prelude to the madness, like the city itself was moaning in anticipation. Fitz nursed a styrofoam cup of gas station sludge, his massive frame crammed into the cruiser, while I flipped through unpaid parking tickets, fighting the pool of exhaustion. We just wrapped a noise complaint in Alameda, nothing but echoes of domestic despair, when the radio crackled to life, its voice cold and mechanical. 207 in progress, robbery, multiple suspects, corner of Vine and 18th, units respond. Fitz met my gaze, and in that split second, I felt it. A chill slithering down my spine, as if the night had exhaled a breath laced with malice. We ditched the cups, flipped the lights, and screamed into the fray. I remember muttering a silent plea. Let it be nothing. A drunk with a pocket knife, some fool swiping beef jerky. But luck had abandoned me long ago, and what we pulled into wasn't a robbery. It was a desecration. The laundromat lay gutted, glass shards glittering like broken teeth under the street lamps. Next door, the mini-mart had been eviscerated. Shelves toppled, contents spewed across the floor in a grotesque display. One clerk clutched a gash on his scalp, blood trickling down his face like tears from a wound that wouldn't heal. The other babbled into a phone, voice fracturing into hysteria. And there, in the epicenter of the carnage, stood two hulking figures, one wielding a crowbar like a scepter of doom, the other clutching a butcher knife, its blade catching the light in a way that promised agony. Fitz barked into the radio, his voice a low rumble of thunder, while I drew my weapon, the gripstick against my palm. The night deepened then, shadows pooling thicker, as if the alleyways were alive and watching. We flanked them. Fitz left, me right, hearts pounding like war drums, breath shallow in the acrid haze. The suspects were mid-rant, weapons slashing the air, holding the block captive with their unhinged fury. One wore ski mask, distorting his features into something inhuman. The other hid behind his bandana, eyes gleaming like a feral madness, like a beast cornered in its den. "Denver PD!" I shouted, my voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "Drop the weapons, on the ground, now!" The crowbar wielder locked his eyes with me, unblinking, a statue of defiance radiating something darker than rage, almost a glee, as if he savored the impending violence. Knife Guy flicked his gaze into the alley, calculations whirring behind those wild eyes. Fight or flight. People always choose, and it's never the freeze you expect. "Do it now," Fitz bellowed, his sidearm steady as death. That's when Knife Guy bolted, pivoting like a shadow detaching from the wall, vanishing into the alley's maw. Fitz lunged at the crowbar thug, tackling him amid crashing metal and splintering wood. I didn't hesitate. I pursued, boots slamming pavement, lungs burning on smoke and dread. The alley narrowed, fenced in rust-eaten chain link, walls scrawled with gang tags that seemed to writhe in the dim light, symbols of ancient curses, the stench of decay assaulting me. Piss, rot, something metallic like old blood. He was fast, unnaturally so, glancing back with eyes that burned with unholy fire. 20 feet, 15, 10. I was gaining. But the chase twisted through corners, past trash bins overflowing with filth, crates splintering like bones, a mattress soaked in God knows what, exhaling a foul breath as we passed. He darted between two buildings, a slit so tight it felt like squeezing into a coffin. I followed blindly, emerging into a nightmare. Not one, 3. The fugitive skid to a halt before his accomplices, all masked, one with a baseball bat, another swinging a length of iron pipe like a pendulum of fate. Their postures shifted, panic flickering, then hardening into something predatory. I raised my weapon, words forming on my lips, but the pipe whistled through the air, cracking my forearm with a burst of white-hot agony. The gun flew, vanishing into the gloom like a lost soul. I reeled, pain exploding like fireworks in my nerves, arm dangling, useless. Instinct surged, arms up, from barroom brawls long forgotten. The back connected with my ribs, a sickening crack echoing into the confined space, driving me to my knees. They said nothing, not a word. That silence, it wormed into my mind, more terrifying than screams. Just grunts, impacts, the wet thud of flesh yielding. A boot to my stomach, forcing bile up my throat. Another stomp on my thigh, bone grinding. I curled fetal, shielding my head, visions flashing. My own gun pressed to my temple. Their laughter, a demonic chorus as they executed me in the filth. But the end didn't come. They melted into the shadows, leaving me broken, blood pooling, uniform sodden, time dissolved. Minutes, hours. As I lay there, breaths ragged, ribs igniting with each inhale. The sky above, framed by rooftops, stared down indifferently. Stars obscured by haze like veiled eyes. Sirens wailed nearby, mocking, not for me. Footsteps approached. I forced myself up, vision blurring through blood and tears. Fitz rounded the corner, another officer in tow, guns sweeping like scythes. "They went that way," I croaked, pointing with my good arm. 3. One's got my gun. Fitz knelt, his face a mask of horror twisted with calculation, eyes probing mine as if assessing a corpse. You're okay, man. EMT's coming. Then a gunshot shattered the night. Close, a quarter mile, followed by 2 more. We froze, the air thickening with omen. The other officer radioed, voice laced with dread. Fitz rose, squeezing my shoulder like a final farewell. Stay down. They vanished, swallowed by the dark. I trembled, nerves aflame, stomach churning, sirens multiplied, a cacophony invading my skull, the city awakening like a beast roused from slumber. EMT arrived, a kid with eyes too innocent for this abyss, cursing under his breath as he probed my wounds. Ribs busted to hell, I muttered, teeth chattering. Arms gone. He worked silently, gauze and splint futile, against the ruin. More shots echoed, then a radio crackle. Officer involved shooting, Vine and 20th, 1 suspect down. The world spun. Shouts, boots thundering past, cops swarming like insects on carrion. I was debris, discarded. Fitz returned later, blood on his sleeve, not his, jaw clenched, eyes boring into mine with unspoken horrors. He knelt. He fired your weapon at us. Missed. I put him down. No relief washed over me, just a void, cold and echoing, as if part of me had been excised in that alley. The others were rounded up. 2 more arrests, weapons reclaimed, charges piling like accusations in a trial of the damned. They were gang scum, flexing for turf, underestimating the cops who chased into the void. Weeks blurred into recovery, doctors mending ribs, resetting arm, murmuring lucky. I nodded. Pocketed painkillers, clutched a slip deeming me fit for duty. I stared at it for days, then shredded it. No more patrols. I retired early, surrendered badge, uniform, the festering trauma. The city didn't care. Months later, another cop ambushed nearby, his death a footnote, devoured by the beast that is Denver. People ask if I miss it, the rush, the purpose. I miss the man I was, not the constant vigil, the metallic tang of fear at a suspect's twitch, the gunshots echoing like friends' final breaths. That night didn't end a shift. It unearthed something primordial, a darkness that lingers. My badge sits in a drawer, cold metal whispering forgotten vowels. Sometimes I hold it, fingers tracing its edges, wondering if the alleys still hunger, waiting for the next soul to wander in. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true, scary police stories. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the rest of the membership of the channel. Thank you all so much for your continuous support, as I always, and will always say, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have a voice and this channel would not exist. Thank you so much for your dedication. If you are new to the channel and you've enjoyed what you've heard, please leave a like and a comment. And if you'd like to become part of the family, please hit that subscribe button and set your bell to all. That way you'll know every time I upload a video. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you are awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. Until next time, stay vigilant out there and please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.